Okay, well, we're playing with Flaperons again today. And this is kind of an update on the last little video I put out on the 701, which was a update, I guess. So, I kind of figured out, I think the problem I had with my Flaperons, and when I went to skin these Flaperons, is my material ended up being a little bit short, I felt, so I was having to force it. I think the reason was I did not have my full 90 degrees on the end of these spars. Now, this one is a, what is this, about 12 degrees, I think? Yeah, the top of the Flaperon spar is about 12 degrees, and I got that. Now, when I originally bent these spars, why they were bent on my max machine brake, and I think this is where something like a day's brake would have actually been an advantage, and I probably wouldn't have had this problem. Now, I wouldn't have traded my max machine brake for a day brake, but you know, for building a day style brake, but it would have been easier, because what happened is once I bent this 12 degrees initially into the end, why there's not enough, when you flip it around, there's not enough clearance on the top leaf with that 45-degree angle to get a full 90 degrees on this bottom of the spar. So I ended up being apparently about 8 degrees short. It looks like 8 to 10 degrees off. Now, I messed around with this other end a little bit, and that's the way it should fit. You know, I'm happy with that angle, and we've got a full 90 degrees there on the end of that spar. So that's the way it should be. When I let me get that out of the way. When I throw a square on the other end, why we're off by that 8 to 10 degrees. So we need a little bit more there. So, and I'm playing with this one. If I can save this one, why I will. If I can't, why we'll just build a new one, because I think there's at least one of these I decided I was rebuilding. But I'm just playing with this one this morning just to try and get back into the swing of things a little bit more. So what I've come up with for a solution for this is I've broke out my other ragged old brake that I built quite some time ago just for things like this. And I don't know if I hadn't built this before or whatever, but basically it's a press brake, but it's a poor man's press brake. I built it out of some I-beam and just some material I had around. We've put a radius nose on it, and we run it with a couple hydraulic jacks. So we're going to go out and see if we can't straighten this one up and get that full 90 degrees. So we'll go take a look at it. Alright, so here's our little setup here. And it's just set up like this. I've got a, this is my short little die that goes under here. This is just some, I think, half-inch tubing or half-inch angle iron that's flipped over, welded upside down, so we've got a little bit of a sharper than a 90 degree. I've got a full-length one that I built before, but it's got a piece of angle set with the open end up, so I don't know that it'll bend far enough to get a full 90 degrees. So we're just doing this in a couple of stages. You know, we're playing. If this works, fine. If it doesn't, well, that's the way it goes. So. And this has been sitting outside. I've ran across this with my wire wheel just on the surfaces, and I'm going to bend a little bit. And we're going to do the same thing we do with our flanging dies, and we're going to spray a little lemon pledge on it, kind of as a lubricant, make it a little bit slicker. And we'll just do it in a couple passes here, hopefully anyway. think we want a little more on this end anyway. Let's see if we can slide her in here and get just a little bit more on this. Overdid that end a little bit. Well, we're going to play with this. That's what we end up with on the end there. We're just a little bit beyond 90. So we'll take this in and massage it a little bit and see if we can't get something that works. Otherwise, we'll be building a new one. Okay, well, we're looking at my ragged table back here. And I've got this back together. It's clecoed back together. And I think I'm actually pretty happy with it. So we're going to try it. Like I say, the most that's going to happen is we're going to rebuild this one too, along with some of the other ones. Got the angles pretty well figured out, I think, on the main spar. I'm going to go ahead and rivet this together with the exception of the mounting angles that go on the bottom. There's two of those. The reason for not doing them yet is when we set them back into the skin, we've got to cut the slots for those angles to sit down through, or the L angle, whatever we're doing, triangulars, however. And we'll want to fit this to the skin without those on it, and then we'll go back and mark that and do the cutouts for those. So I'm going to go ahead and rivet them together. Now I haven't, I just grabbed my riveter. You know, as I've said before, I like these little Nico riveters. And I've got this marked. Now I've not used this for months type of thing. So we're going to either find out if these are really a good riveter or they're not. Now, I've had these for several years. Like I said before, I went through the Harbor Freight air riveters, and I won't give you a dime for them. But I've got two of these, one set up for A4, one set up for A5, and I've got them marked the way I want them. This one's marked A4, and then I've got the pressures that I found work well for these. And we've got them on a regulated pressure supply. For A4s, I've got it set at 45, or I've got it marked at 45. Since I haven't used this, I think I've got it set about 55 or so. And there again, I haven't done anything with this. We're going to oil them a little bit. Just give it a little bit of oil there into the air intake. And we're just going to cycle it a few times. Now, I've never had any problems with these riveters. The only thing that I have run into is after they'd set for about a year and a half or so. I had one that had loosened up, and I don't remember if it was on this half or if it was on the back half, and I just had to go back and tighten those slightly. Otherwise, I've never had a problem with these riveters, so that's why I believe in them so much. And there again, I've linked all this stuff in the description below. But I think we're going to leave that set at whatever, I think it's 55 right now, according to my little regulator. That's about 50 actually. So let's just pull a couple of rivets here and see how it's going to sound, how it's going to talk to us. I think we'll start out here in the on this rib, just because it's out there's easy access to it. Yeah, that'll work just fine. I've got one skin that I've not drilled or anything yet, so we're going to see how well it's going to fit on this. just playing. I'm not in any hurry at all, so. I want to go back and deburr this nose rib here. It doesn't appear that it got deburred for whatever reason. Scotch-Brite. Still getting back into the swing of things here. Let me gather up some stuff and I'll be right back. Alright, Scotch-Brite it off. We're going to wipe it down. The can is marked lacquer thinner, but we just refilled it with acetone because that's what I normally use here. The problem with most of the little cans I've got around here, I like these pint-sized cans for handling stuff like this rather than refilling a gallon or something like that. The thing I like about this can is when you buy acetone now, when you buy most things now, they've got these stupid ass safety caps on them. And while they may be safer, why they're pain in the ass. So anyway, get that cleaned up, taken care of. A little bit of corrosion protection here, mating surfaces. We'll let that dry. And then we can assemble it. In the meantime, yes, you can up the air pressure and these will pop, it'll pull these quite a bit faster, but this seems a little more controlled to me. I'm not worried about it. It gives us a nice rivet, so That's all I'm interested in. There's our skeleton. Okay, so next thing is we have one skin here. Actually, that's not the next thing. We've got the skin. We'll come back when we start laying that out. What I'm going to do is go along, just double check everything here. Mark my center lines on the center of the rib so I know where we're drilling holes when we go to align it. And we'll come back in a bit. Alright, I've taken a little different approach to doing this one. This is the left wing, the inboard flaperon. So we got the skin riveted together. Now what I've done is I took the last skin that I had and it was cut 2 dimensions. And I went ahead and just set the skeleton inside it, went ahead, folded it over, duct taped it down to bring it together, and then I've gone along and clamped it. Then I just worked each end of the slat to, or the ribs to where they were at the front and laying in the way they should be, which if that works out right, why that gives me the right dimensions. So what I'm going to go ahead and do is go ahead and undo this, check my measurements here, and if that's for where the back end of each of the ribs is, and if that works out to be right, why I'll use that as my layout, and then I'll go ahead and we'll position the skeleton where it's supposed to be inside, go ahead and drill the bottom, then we can roll it and do the top, go back and drill and rivet just like normal construction. So that may be the proper way to do it rather than the way I monkeyed around with it before and screwed up a bunch of flaperons. So that's kind of where we're at. These little clamps are great little savers for that. They're relatively inexpensive and come in really useful for stuff like this without damaging anything. I just taped over the nose ribs and just to make sure I don't damage the underside of the skeleton there, and I peeled it off on the ends where I went ahead and put them together. So I think that looks pretty good. Where are we at for measurements here? Well, should have a little scale here. Okay, I think that looks like it's about right, just because they do vary. But this outboard rib sticks out like this. Is angled just about like should sit there just like that. Well, let's see, we're going to monkey around with this for a little bit. We'll probably lay this out one more time, go ahead, tape it back down, and verify measurements, because I don't want to screw this up if I don't have to. I think I've established my rear rib line, so now we're just going to lay out a center line, which is going to be right about there. Okay, we'll establish that as our lower rib center line, and then we have to figure out our rib spacing. And we come off of that end, and I'm working in reverse of the drawings because we're showing a right hand wing here and I'm working on the left hand inboard. So if we start at the center, and we don't want this because we're just using this as a straight edge since it's all in English, or imperial, I guess would be the proper way of putting it. We can go to this one. So this is our inboard end, so that's our center, or where the inboard meets the outboard. We want to come out 192. And we'll verify this about 3 different times and make sure we're not miscalculating here. What I'm going to do is just lay them out off of the ribs, and then we'll verify it with where the skeleton fits in. 398. $260. 258. $162. Should leave us with 170. Which leaves us with 165. Let's see here. 92. $398. We grew a little bit there. $100. $260. $258. $162. And 170. There we go. Okay. And as we start to redo our setup here, I have to go find my square because I've evidently left it someplace else. Gone along and manually verified each rivet hole before I even start drilling them and everything. So I've laid out all of my rivet spacing, so we've got good rivet spacing on all of them. The only ones that are really questionable are stuff like where the nose ribs are up here on this outer edge, because we've got a flute in here we've got to get around and then still get edge distance from the ends. So to take the time to manually lay those out, I think is well worth it. So hopefully we've got these all right. This will set in here. I'm going to go ahead and pre-drill the bottom skin, and we'll do that with a number 40 so we can use small clecos in here, and we'll get that set in place and everything, and then we'll move on to the top section and do the same thing. Once we work it around and get the initial settings on the top skin, we can go ahead and get them drilled and clecoed in place, and I think we're on the right track for flaperons now. So anyway, I'm going to leave it here for right now. I've got a couple errands to run with my wife, and maybe we'll get back to this afternoon.